actually heard someone out there tonight say, why are you launching Meidas Canada in North Rustico? You have to ask that question. It's obvious why we're launching it here. This is the heart of Canada, is it not? Yes. We're thrilled to be here, and we want to just give a shout out to everyone who made it happen, because these tours just don't happen. Rosie was relentless. In fact, we were terrified of her. And then to upstage me, she went and got engaged tonight. So now we're going to come back for the wedding. And then you're all invited too. Okay, so I know we got people from just down the road. How far down the road?
Buffalo Road.
Buffalo Road. Okay, put that on the map. Where's that? Sambria. And I think we got Ontario. Is Ontario? That's down the road, is it not? Wow. Awesome, good to see you. And we got Annapolis Valley. And we got Truro. Good. We got how many people from New Brunswick? It seemed like everybody from New Brunswick. Awesome, seeing you, New Brunswick. And we got Missouri here. Yeah? Have I missed any place else? Saskatchewan. I'm going to be in Saskatchewan. Meidas is going there. Okay, Saskatchewan. Where else? Vancouver. That's just a little west of Toronto, isn't it? Where else?
Stanley Bridge.
Where?
Stanley Bridge.
Stanley Bridge. Okay. I want to thank you folks for being here. And we're going to have a good talk tonight. We're going to talk about the threat. We're not going to sugarcoat the threat. We're going to talk about how we are going to stand up and why Canada is the front line right now. This is not just about tariffs. Anyone think that I had a solution on tariffs? Let's see a show of hands. No show of hands. You're here because you see the rule of law disintegrating south of the border. Do you not? Yeah. And you see the rise of gangster regimes, like Vladimir Putin and the attack on the people of Ukraine.
Yes.
And you see the threat to our nation.
Yes.
And you understand, and you understood the first time you saw that guy, that there was no being nice to him, no negotiating, that we were going to have to hold the line.
Yes.
Right? So I'm not going to sugarcoat what's coming, but we're going to get through this. And we're going to get through this because of some fundamentals. I would like to tell you that someone's coming to save us. Nobody's coming to save us. I only work for you. I learned that when I went to Brussels as my last act as a member of Parliament, when I went to the NATO meetings.
This is good.
As I wanted to see, because I was sure that Big Brother United Kingdom and Big Brother France and Big Brother Germany would be all there for us. Not one of them came near the Canadian delegation because they were all kissing up to MAGA. And I was like, oh, okay. I see how this is going to go down. And who came up and spoke to us? Latvia and Lithuania and Estonia, because they're the front lines. And I guess I wasn't polite with the people at NATO, but I felt someone had to school them, because one of them guys, one of their or their general counsel dudes, you know, the big guys, he got up and he said that, you know, and he was trying to tell the Americans, and there were all these MAGA guys. And then he looked at our delegation, he said, in Canada, you have to pull your weight. And I stood up. And I looked up at everybody in those stands. And I said, my wife's uncle lies 15 minutes up the road in a graveyard. And you tell me we have to pull our weight? There isn't a graveyard or place in anywhere in Europe that doesn't have young Canadians and Canadians from these communities. Don't ever tell us that when it comes to fascism, we don't pull our weight. Right? That's why we are who we are, because it's in our DNA. But I want to shift this discussion just a bit, because I want to talk about why our values make us who we are. And I was thinking about this place, Prince Edward Island, and how captivating it is, and how beautiful it is, and how rooted the people here are in your land, and what you will do to defend that. Because it's about values. Place is about values. You know, Ortega y Gasset, the Spanish writer, said, "Show me the landscape on which you live, and I will tell you who you are." And I don't come from land this nice. I come from scrappy land. I come from the hard rock of the Canadian Shield, with the jack pine forests. And it's so cold in the winter, they said when they built the mines, they had to put them underground. Oh yeah. And everybody in the towns I come from were come from a ways. And they left beautiful places like this to follow the jobs. And my grandfather was a Cape Bretoner from Iona. And he went to work because that's where the jobs were. And I want to share something that connects Prince Edward Island and my hometown. You know, nobody ever sang songs about who we were. Nobody ever told stories about us. We were a whole bunch of mongrel people working the deep mines, all the Croatians and all the Finlanders and all the Ukrainians and all the Cape Bretoners. Nobody ever talked about us. We were never on CBC. They never came up and did documentaries. And a guy who was down on his luck one day showed up in our town. And he asked if they'd give him a bed for the night in exchange for a few songs. You know who that is? Stompin' Tom. And in 1966, I don't know if you know this song, but in 1966, this was the #1 song in Timmins, Ontario. It outsold the Beatles. Oh, there's grief among the people in that northern Timmins town, 'cause someone hollered fire, the mine is burning down. Came rushing to the surface, those McIntyre men, to make ready and prepare to let the firefighters in, 'cause there's a fire way down in the mine. And that was the first time we ever heard our story told by someone. And I would say to you, and I'm not blowing smoke, Stompin' Tom is a bigger political influence on me than any political theorist, because he wrote about the people in their place. And I know that Canada is rooted in the place. That's what makes us Canadian. So let me tell you about the place that I'm from. So yeah, my Cape Breton grandfather, Saturday nights we had Cayleys. Man, I love this music. But we had Cayleys in a neighborhood called the Manita, which is Italian for slang for money. And the Italians would come over. And my grandfather made the best spaghetti. It's not natural to Cape Breton, I don't think. But because when one of the Italian families, one of the miners got sick, my grandmother looked after the kids. Because that's what you do in a mining town. And my dad, when he married my mom, he said, "How are your cabbage rolls?" And my dad's Scottish too. I don't think cabbage rolls are natural. But that's what they learned from their Ukrainian neighbors. And when I married my wife, who's from Alberta, I said to her on Christmas Day, "Where's the Finnish bread?" She said, "Do I look like a Finlander?" And I said, "Well, that's what we grew up on." You see, the people who came from away to work these hard mines, all they had was each other. Nobody was going to look after them. And my Cape Breton grandfather was the credit manager at the local credit union. He didn't have an education. He left school early to go work. None of them had educations, but they were smart people. You couldn't fool them. They'd be shocked and appalled by what they're seeing now. And you know, I heard a great story from one of the people that was being interviewed about our town. and all the Yugoslavians and the Croatians in the town of Schumacher. I think we got some people from Schumacher here tonight, don't we? Yes, we got Schumacher here. And the mother didn't know how to get her kid in school because she couldn't speak English, and her husband worked in the mine. And she saw all the children walking one day down the road. She told her kids, get in that line. And they went to a school and they couldn't speak English. And that little working class school put out teachers and doctors and lawyers, because that's what a public education does. And that's what our community's built. And that's who we are. So, when I got an invite today to go to Moe's Latte in Charlottetown, and I thought, yeah, we're still doing that. To the Syrian people who had to leave the bombs and the violence, and they came here and they made home. Because that's who we are. And I'll tell you one other story that sets us up for where we're going. The only thing we ever produced, other than the great people of our region, massive amounts of gold for massive companies that all left town, and hockey players. Lots and lots and lots of hockey players. Ralph Backstrom, Ted Lindsay, Alan Stanley, Bill Barocco, Tim Horton. And why were they all such hockey playing towns? Because you either learned to play hockey or you went underground. So Pat Hannigan told me this story. And Pat Hannigan was from Schumacher. And he said at 14 they got the tryouts to go to St. Mike's, the boys' school. And St. Mike's was the feeder school for the Toronto Maple Leafs. And if you made the Easter tryouts, you might get out of the mines. So all the boys from Schumacher went down on the train. And they got the opening line scrimmage. The priest dropped the puck. And all those boys dropped the gloves and beat the crap out of every other boy on the ice. That's a true story. And every one of those boys got a scholarship to St. Mike's. So when Pete Hegseth says, whoa, Canada, stop all this talk about hockey. Yeah, you have no idea what happens once we move from raising the elbows to dropping the gloves. You have no idea. And I tell that because I could be telling that story in Weyburn, Saskatchewan, or here in Prince Edward Island, or in those gold mines in Northern Ontario. Because place is different everywhere, but what's common are the values of who we are as a people. And that's what makes us strong. Because they thought we were pushovers. The gangsters believe that there's going to be a new world order, and I know that's what all the conspiracy people talk about, the new world order. Well, the new world order that they're trying to build is Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump and the rise of the gangsters. So when Donald Trump started coming at us, and he came at us on Christmas Day of all days, started insulting us and attacking us, this wasn't Donald being Donald. This was the rise of a new era of gangster fascism. That they believed they could just move the border. That they would make us a vassal state, that we would beg. He said that he would economically break us so that we would beg to be the 51st state. That ain't ever gonna happen. Not when you come from the communities that we come from. Not when you see how people who were given nothing except a chance to make a better life, made a better life because they worked together. I want to see another show of hands. Anyone out there who's ever seen someone stuck at the side of the road in the snow and decided, no, don't put your hand up yet, and decided, you're looking from the window of your restaurant or from your house and said, oh, well, someone else will come and help them. Anyone ever done that? No. Because we know what it's like to be stuck in a snowbank. And it doesn't matter who you are, who you voted for, whether we know you or not. If you're stuck, a Canadian's going to help you. That's what we do, right? These are the values that we defend. And before I get into the struggle that we're going to see ahead of us, I want to say I understood it fully when I was asked with the Canadian government to be there at the commemorations at Normandy. And I understood for the first time what the sacrifice was. You know, I read about my history books, but I didn't understand until I saw those graves. Grave after grave after grave. And they're not just a whole series of names. They're buried by towns, because those were the days they were killed, when they fed Calgary into the meat grinder and then replaced them with New Brunswick the next day and replaced them with Montreal and the Chaudière Regiment. And I remember it's around July 1944 that all the boys from my region's graves are, because that's when they brought in the Algonquin Regiment. And all my uncles were in the Cape Breton Highlanders, and they fought their way through Italy. And we know nothing about what they fought, because the ones who came back never spoke about it. And when I saw all those graves, I understood what it took to build a democratic order in a world of darkness. And it really shook me up, because I thought, would we have the strength to do that today? That a nation of 11 million would keep the sea lanes open, would chase the Luftwaffe from the skies, would be on every battlefield, 11 million people. And that we would do that for people we didn't know, to free them from tyranny. And when it was done, we would come back home and we'd get on with our lives. It's an extraordinary understanding I finally had of what democracy means. So damn if I'm going to stand here and watch that world that our uncles and grandfathers built be taken away by these gangsters and these goofball influencers and these people who think they can push us around, because it's not about us. It's about making sure that our children are not going to be on that front line. That's why we're here. People keep asking me, that's just ginger ale. Oh, you got to see the half and half version. People ask me, well, you got so much energy on this, and you seem so sure. Why is it? Well, I wasn't any more sure than you were when the threat happened. I woke up the morning after the Trump election, and I knew that the world had changed forever. Because I knew that Donald Trump 2024, November 2024, was not the Donald Trump of 2016. He'd been conjured up out of this dark Ouija board of the Boogaloo Boys and the Proud Boys and the disinformation and the hate bots. And I knew that we were going to see something that we'd never seen before. I didn't know how bad it was going to be, but I knew that we were in different terrain from here on in. And I lay in bed that morning, and I decided I'm going to have a media-free day. I'm not going to go to Parliament. I'm going to play my record player, and I'm just going to tune the world out. That lasted to about 8:15 in the morning. When my Alberta wife called from Northern Ontario and said, you haven't posted anything on Facebook yet. Now my wife is convinced I married Facebook, so why is she trolling me on Facebook? And I said, I don't know what to say. She said, you say something. Because people need to hear someone say something now. You need to speak up. I said, well, what am I going to say? She said, you figure it out. So I started to speak. And people started to reach out from all over. And that's when I knew, number one, that we were in this together in a way I didn't know we were in this together before. And then people started stopping me on the street saying, I heard you in Parliament, because I decided my final months in Parliament I was going to speak up about what we're facing. We're facing a threat of fascism. We're facing the deterioration of the rule of law, and someone had to say it. People were coming up and saying, oh my God, that was a great speech. And I was like, who listens to the parliamentary debates? There's one at the back. We got one. Okay, we got one. Democracy's in good condition here in North Rustico. And people said, "You watch Meidas touch." And I said, "What?" And Meidas touch was showing my speeches in Parliament. And then people started to reach out from all over. And then I realized that this wasn't just about us standing up to Donald Trump. This was about us finding a way to build a network of people, of good people, all over the world who share the same values. Because you know what? People who believe in decency and the rule of law and democracy and believe that people shouldn't be put in cages, they're the majority. And when we're the majority, we need to take it back from them because they're the criminals. So I started to think, well, maybe there's hope. And I want to talk about the boycott because it is an extraordinary thing that's happened. And you may not hear much about the boycott. I know CBC never interviews me about the boycott. They want to know what about the internal problems of the NDP. Oh, frick, I could write a book. You never wanted the book before, but now suddenly that's the biggest issue in your life is what's going to happen in the NDP leadership and not what we're doing to stand up to fascism. And you know why? Because they thought we were going to get tired of it. It was a passing fad. Elbows up. Elbows down. Canadians would cry themselves back to sleep. And I knew we were not going to. It's that Juno Beach gene. You know, that when we see something wrong, we don't stop. In the war, what if it was a crappy job, they always gave it to Canadians. Because we never got the thanks from anybody, but we got the job done. Right? And so the boycott, I'm here to tell you that we are doing something extraordinary. I'm going to talk about what we're doing, and I'm going to tell you what the threat is. But I want to think about the boycott for a moment, because nobody told us to boycott. It is the first grassroots resistance movement that I've ever heard of that started literally from the grassroots. There's no organizers. There's no planners. Amen. Amen. You made that decision, and you made that decision, and you made that decision. And my dear sainted mother, a miner's daughter, she told me in the days when we were afraid, right? And we were afraid. And she was going through a snowstorm and pushing her walker. And a lady came up and offered to help my mom. My mom says, "I can get through here." And the woman walked with my mom. She said, "Do you think we're going to get through this?" And my mom said, "I'll eat root vegetables before I eat anything from the United States again. We grew up on root vegetables, we'll eat them again." So right now, we have cost the American economy $29 billion in travel alone. CNBC, you're not going to get this from CTV. I saw their headline, "Oh, boycott waiting." You're not going to get it from Financial Post. Boycott had no effect. CNBC says that they expect a $90 billion loss. $90 billion. And you know what that is? That's the pressure that's needed. Because Trump can threaten our leaders. He can intimidate them. He can keep raising the temperature. But he can't make you kiss his ring. And no Canadian will ever kiss his ring. That is the power of the boycott. And I want to say something else that's really moving at this time. You know, when someone, like, okay, we come from a hockey background. You know, we know what it is to go over the board. Someone pushes your team, you push back. They push again, coach sends them over the boards, right? We're trying to explain these political terms. Ben's been pretty good. Ben's been good on the terms, but we got to teach these to Americans. But I get messages from people in Florida who say, "Keep it up. We cannot allow our state to be turned into a place that has concentration camps. So it hurts us economically, but we will take that pain. That's an amazing thing. That's our American brothers and sisters who are saying, we stand with you right now. What you're doing matters. A woman wrote to me and said, my son-in-law is on the production line at Jim Beam Bourbon. And the second Trump pushed Canada, we took a major hit. And she said, keep it up. Because it's the only way we're going to get our country back. So that's what the boycott is. The boycott is you and you and you and you saying, this is the line and you shall not cross this line. Because if we don't keep that line, worse trouble's coming. And worse trouble is coming. We're coming into the great storm. We may look back on these 6 months as the good time when we were all showing such Canadian unity. The storm is going to come on a number of fronts. As long as we know what the storm looks like and we prepare for it, and you guys, you know more about storms than I do. You know what it means when you know what kind of storm is coming. The first part of the storm is not going to be Donald Trump. It's going to be MAGA Maple. Anyone who thinks that Pierre Poilievre is going to go back into the House of Commons and show maturity, it's never going to happen. I've sat across from that guy for 21 years. I know what a political arsonist is. And he's already doing the language that we're being flooded by immigrants. Well, I'm thinking, well, you mean like the beautiful Syrian family who set up here? And the wonderful young woman from Nepal who served us last night, and not only served us, our meals, but came over and talked to us and hung out with us. Because she learned that in Canada, that's what you do. You know, and in my region, in the north, where we count on the young immigrant families, just like my family who came from Scotland and all the Croatian neighbors came, and we count on them, and they're part of Canada. They're not flooding us. They share our values. So I'm saying this because you look at Europe and the rage battles that are going on in the streets of Europe about the migrants and about the threat. The MAGA playbook is not something they make up. It's played out in region after region, community after community, country after country. You just have to look at what they're doing over there to know they're bringing it over here. That's why we're getting so many messages from Germany, from Norway, from Denmark saying, we all have to work together. It's a bigger threat. So number one threat is going to be, we've got a really smart guy, but he's a political newbie, and he's going to go into a parliament that's going to quickly descend into the rage factor. And he's got to get through that. I'm not a liberal, never voted liberal in my life, but he ran to be our wartime prime minister, and we need a wartime prime minister, so you got to hold the line. You got to hold the line. I don't care what happens after, if you hold the line now. So number one, the threat is going to be the rage machine here. And then number two, our Quisling Premier from Alberta. Who, you know, Canada came under threat and everyone stood up and everyone were going to work together, except suddenly Danielle Smith was down in Mar-a-Lago with Kevin Leary, the king of the grifters, who wanted to sell our nation out, and she was getting her picture with him. She wasn't there with Team Alberta, with all the business people in Alberta. I spent a lot of time in Alberta. There's not a place in this country that's got more ideas and more plans to build and go ahead. She didn't go down to Mar-a-Lago with them. She was down there with Jordan Peterson and Kevin O'Leary and Donald Trump. And suddenly then we got this MAGA, then we suddenly got the MAGA treason team, right? They were going to break our country up. Like one of the dudes that's in charge of the Alberta independence movement, they call it, is a U.S. Marine. Like, okay, how predictable can you get? And again, we did a huge rally in Edmonton. You couldn't even get in. We cannot be divided from each other. Don't ever let them play region off region, but that's what's going to happen. Yeah. And it's going to happen through online disinformation and rage bots, and they're going to start trying to poke us, so we start fighting with each other. And that's when Donald Trump is going to ratchet up the economic pressure on us. That's the storm that's coming. And, you know, We keep hoping that Donald Trump gets disorganized or he's not thinking. Every day, I know, we keep hoping. I see a couple of t-shirts out there that I'm not going to mention, right there, yeah. But that there's a playbook, and they're playing the long game. When they said that they were going to economically break us, they didn't think they were going to do it overnight. They didn't think it was going to happen by April. It's going to be a long, sustained pressure. So the storm is coming. It's going to be a storm of disinformation, a storm of AI bots, stuff we haven't even, I'm beginning to see the stuff appearing. God, I see me in AI things kicking down the doors of Parliament, which I could have done, but I never did. But I'm thinking, well, that looks pretty real. So that we stop even understanding what reality is. That is the threat that's coming. And it's because we've shown unity and we've shown determination. They need to break us from each other. That's the threat. But we've shown unity, and we've shown determination, and we're rooted in place. So I wanted to talk about the importance of place, because we have to remember where it is that we're from and what we represent. So I need to ask you to do a few things, because we're going to get through this. People say, are you optimistic? Hell no. I am not optimistic at all. Am I hopeful? I'm very hopeful. I'm hopeful because I see people here in North Rustico, like I see people in Edmonton, like I see people in every community in this country. First time I've been here, I felt like I was home. I felt that in every community I've ever been in Canada, because every place is home. We need to always remember that we are not only a nation, but we are a family. And you don't fuck with our family. Right? So we got to hold the line together. And I want to tell you a story, because standing up to bullies is a scary thing. I know, man, my whole school life was that. And you think, why isn't someone else speaking up? Because everyone else is waiting for you. And the first time you speak up, it's frightening. I remember a woman at one of our first Elbows Up rallies in Toronto, and she said she was so sickened with fear, she didn't know what to do. So she started knocking on her neighbor's door in the city, just to find out if someone else cared. And they all did. And I said, let's form a group. And they did. You know, we lived in COVID for too long. We lived on Zoom for too long. And we got suspicious of each other. And so we didn't talk politics and we didn't go out. You need to go out. We need community meetings like this. You need to meet people you didn't know, because they are your brothers and sisters. That's really important. And I want to tell you a story that is sticking with me. I read this amazing book recently called Moral Ambition by a Dutch writer. Yes. And he talked about those who stood up to the Nazis in the Netherlands. And that, you know, there's a myth about the resistance and everybody was part of the resistance. No, not everyone was part of the resistance. In community after community, country after country where the Nazis took over, the majority went along. The administrators went along. The legal officials went along. You know, they may turn their back once in a while, but that was nothing in stopping the death machine. But in every part of Europe where someone stood up and said, no, I'm not going along with this, there's been massive studies done. What made it possible for one person to stand up, knowing that they were facing torture and death and the death of their families, and someone else didn't? So in the book Moral Ambition, he talks about this village of Nieuwlande in the Netherlands. It saved more Jews in that community than all of the rest. And so they studied it and they thought, well, maybe they were more religious. Nope. Maybe they weren't religious. Nope. Maybe they were left-wing. Nope. Maybe they were right-wing. Nope. Maybe they were educated. Nope. Maybe they were uneducated. Nope, there was no connection except one. Everyone who saved a Jewish family did so because someone asked them to step up. Now think about that. Someone said, I need you to help. And people said, well, I can't help. I mean, we could be arrested. I don't know what to do. But I need you to do this. Just this once. And there's a theory about it. It's called zeros, ones, and twos. So the zero is the person who starts the resistance. And often the person who starts the resistance is not necessarily successful in normal life. They're oddballs. They're such oddballs that they don't mind going and knocking on a neighbor's door and saying you got to do the right thing. So the zero is the one who goes to someone and says, I need you to help. If that person agrees, they become the one. So you have a 0 and a 1. And if the 1 gets a 2, then you got 0, 1, 2. And then from 2 you go to 4, and from 4 to 8. It's like a contagion of hope. And that the vast majority of people who were asked to help stayed in the resistance the long term. Very few people helped once and quit because they were inspired to help. They were invigorated by helping. And I think that this is a lesson that I've been really trying to figure out how we do this, because we get overwhelmed, and I know people doom scroll. You wake up in the morning and you grab your phone. Is he dead yet? You know? And the thing is, if he is, I don't think it's going to change. I think we're going to deal with now more chaos. So you got to think, what am I going to do? Well, you get active. And I know that might sound like I'm not giving you a big solution, but nobody is going to come and save us. Nobody's going to restore our democracy unless we restore it ourselves. We're going to restore it here in North Rustico. Right? We're going to restore it in Charlotte County. And we're going to restore it with people like Rosie, who've never done this before. Now, isn't she the best organizer? Rosie's going to do all her organizing. Rosie, to me, is the resistance because she didn't know what else to do, so she called us and said, would you actually do, can I have you come? It's like, damn right, we'll come. Zeros, ones, and twos. And that's what we did with the boycott. And that's why the rest of the world is watching us right now. Because they're frightened. And we get messages from all over the world, from Australia, New Zealand, Scotland, Latvia, Finland, all across the United States every single day. And they say, we're watching you, Canada. You're inspiring us. Because we're just a nation of zeros, ones, and twos. We don't need big people to do it. I wish they would, but they're not going to. But it's going to be us doing this together. This is resistance. And resistance has to be built like a web. And on that web, we start building our foundations. And we start taking back. We start taking back the language of democracy. We start taking back the decency and the respect. And we call out. Yes. You know, when I was on with Ben Silas the other night, we were talking about this, and he said, we move from resistance to offensive. You know, we've been playing defensive against these guys for too long. He said, you know, when your cousin says something that you know is wrong, you just got to say, whoa, don't, stop. We've given up too much ground, and once you start giving up ground, they take more ground. And things that weren't acceptable 5 years ago and 10 years ago have become very common now because they're bold. Well, I'm sorry. I come from a tradition where fascists shouldn't be bold. Fascists should be put on the run, right? That's what we come from in Canada. That's our tradition. It's the Juno Beach gene. So we are here to launch. And people say, what do you think you're going to accomplish out of this? Hell, I don't know. Except I know that they are never going to cross our border. I know that we are never going to turn our democracy into that monkey show of hate. And I know that if there's nobody else in the trench with me but a bunch of Canadians, I'll take those odds any day. Any day. Because we are united and they're divided. Never forget that we are united. And the storm that's coming is going to be about dividing us. We don't have to fear that storm. You survive big storms. Heck, all the time. They can shut the roads down in my region. We got a wood stove. We'll get through. We know when the storm's coming, and we get through it. We don't get through the storm if we let the storm divide us. If they can't divide us, you can never, ever, ever beat a Canadian when it's about standing up for the rule of law and standing up for decency. Right? So that's it. I got no more big plans. I got no more big ideas. I'm just counting on you. Because again, they may be 10 times bigger, but they're eating themselves raw. And we have seen what happens when you give ground to the point that they can talk about kidnapping people off the street and putting them in cages and having alligators chase them. That's not something that we will ever allow. And we have over 150 Canadians, including children, kidnapped right now off the streets in the United States. People who've done nothing wrong. And we're going to speak up for them. And we have to be bold and strong every step of the way. And I know you are, because that's why you're here. Because you're Canadians. Our cenotaphs and every one of our towns showed that we were bold and strong and we did the job. And when the job was done, we didn't come home and brag and say we were the band of brothers or we were the best generation. We did the job. And we went back because that's what you do as a Canadian. Because at the end of the day, no matter what Donald Trump, no matter what Vladimir Putin, no matter what Pete Hegseth or whoever they've got down there threatens us with, they can't take away from us the fundamental fact that we are a nation that is true, north, strong, and free. And we will always be true, north, strong, and free. That's who we are. That's why we're here. That's why we launched Meidas Canada here in North Rustico, because you folks are the backbone of the resistance. Thank you. Thank you. We got a hell of a fight ahead of us, but bring it on. We will be standing at the end of the day. We will be there, and people will be with us. They will never, ever, ever cross the line. This is our land. These are our values, and we will fight like hell to defend decency and goodness. Thank you. Merci. Big Rich. Thank you.